Big, bulky, and old, New York voting machines have no fancy touchscreens or paper record. They are purely mechanical, recording votes like a car odometer.
We've been using these chute lever machines since 1962.
But in 2002, Congress passed the Help America Vote Act, requiring states to replace old machines with new ones that offer audit capabilities and accessibility to the disabled. New York is the only state that's not complying with the federal law.
The mistakes take place at this point.
Valerie Vasquez from the city's Board of Elections says lever machines require poll inspectors to record the total amount of votes by hand. Numbers are passed to police officers, rewritten again, and then dispersed to the media. But discrepancies between unofficial results and numbers later certified by the city occur often.
When you're dealing with poll workers that have been there from maybe 5:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night, 16-hour days, unfortunately human error is a factor.
Casting a vote on these machines is quite simple. You just pull the red handle and pull a lever for the candidate you support.
May or may not have a dog in.
Busy people often, by habit, make check marks on the ballot in states where X's are required. They might as well have stayed home. That vote is a no vote, doesn't count, illegal. Other voters find that at the last minute they have accidentally voted for the wrong man, or they change their mind. Don't, lady? It doesn't count. Or, you know election pencils. Good try, sir. But this ballot will be thrown out.
I want to turn, if I may, to the topic of voter fraud. Your counterpart, DNC chair and Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was a guest on our broadcast Thursday, and she had this to say about Republican efforts to pass laws in up to 40 states, 40, that she says are specifically designed to suppress voting and voters' rights.
What they're doing is trying to make sure that because they can't win an election on the merits, they're trying to rig these elections by ensuring the people who will go to the polls and vote for Democrats can't get there.
To be perfectly fair, sir, is that not the case?
Well, I don't know what you mean by perfectly fair.
Well, you have an opportunity now to respond to what she said.
I got you.
That's what I meant.
I got you. No, I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's an 80% issue in this country that just like renting a movie and getting on an airplane and getting in a federal building, if you go cast your ballot, you ought to be able to prove who you say you are and where you say you live before you cast a ballot. And you know what? 80% of the people in this country agree with that. This is just common sense. You know, I come from a state, Martin, that before Scott Walker got into office, you could literally walk into the polls and just raise your right hand on the day of the election and say, oh, I'm Paul Jones and I live here in Kenosha, and I'll sign this provisional piece of paper and I can go grab a ballot and vote. That's ridiculous.
I'm sure some of those electoral officers in that area would challenge that. But just last night...
people have been charged, Martin,
But just last night, Republicans in the House voted to dismantle the Election Assistance Commission, the sole purpose of which is to make sure states meet voting standards that prevent fraud. Why would Republicans do that if they're honestly concerned about voting fraud?
Let me get this straight. So you've got a problem, Martin, with someone walking in the polls and having to show some form of identification in order to vote?
Sorry, sir, I'm talking about seeking to dismantle the Election Assistance Commission. Why would you do that?
Well, listen, I don't get into the specifics there, Martin, but let me tell you something. I come from a state in Wisconsin that was absolutely riddled with voter fraud, okay? And they had the Smokes for Votes exchange in Milwaukee. This is something that has nothing to do with constitutional rights of the people who are committing the fraud. It has to do with the constitutional rights of people under our Constitution, that one person gets one vote, not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, by not having reasonable voting standards in this country to make sure that fraud doesn't occur.
We turn now, though, to an exposé just published in The Nation magazine that raises alarming questions about the ability of corporations to influence their employees' voting decisions. In an article titled Big Brother's Thought Control at Coke, Mark Ames and Mike Elk report on an urgent letter that Coke Industries sent to most of its 50,000 employees on the eve of the November elections. The letter advised them on whom to vote for and warned them of the dire consequences to their families, their jobs, and their country should they choose to vote otherwise. Coke Industries is run by billionaire brothers Charles and David Koch. They've helped to bankroll the Tea Party movement and dozens of other right-wing causes. Koch Industries and other corporations are legally allowed to pressure their workers to adopt their political views at the ballot box because of last year's Citizens United Supreme Court decision. The ruling granted free speech rights to corporations and effectively removed regulations preventing employers from politically manipulating their workers. In practice, employers can also fire workers who refuse to attend political seminars or dare to voice their dissenting opinions too loudly.
Anytime unemployment goes down, I think that helps the whole country, and it certainly does help me and my outlooks when I get out of school, which isn't too long from now.
I think Ronald Reagan has brought a new spirit into everybody in America.
New voters, it seems to me, reflect more than anything else, more or less what the rest of the country is doing.
Gone from the fact that we used to be long-haired and everything else, now it looks like the 50s again around here. People were more conservative back then, and those are our parents, and they bring us up with those ideals too.
That's the best thing about President Reagan. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of myself and my dad. And I think that's something that people look to and they like about him and they respect him for it.